Welcome, everybody, to the Coach Brew podcast. This is episode I See You. And today, I need to remind you, this episode of the podcast is brought to you by our clothing brand, Chin Up Chest Out Apparel. You can head over to chinupchestout.com, check out our new line in the fall and then also the winter collection, which is about to drop, and that's at chinupchestout.com. They support the podcast. And this episode is a very, very special episode with a special guest. You could call her an educator. You could call her a teacher. I would call her a friend, colleague, mentor. She is, in many ways, my boss, my agent, confidant. I have a lot of different descriptions for Rhonda Yaklin. And we're going to talk about this concept she has of I see you. And Rhonda, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. You are an educator of 38 years, which is like 967 years in dog years. You know, I used to joke when I was coaching that 1 year as a coach is like 7 years in any other profession. You could probably argue that education, you know, as an instructor, a classroom teacher, you know, in some cases could age you similarly. But you just have a wealth of experience, both at your current district in Riviera, Texas, but also in Tusculum, Tennessee as well, correct?
Tusculum. Well, Tusculum was the school, but it was in Nashville, Tennessee. And
Gotcha.
prior to that, it was 30 years in Orange Grove, Texas. So
Okay.
5 in Tusculum, 5 in Nashville, of course, at Tusculum. Prior to that, it was 30 years in Nashville, Tennessee. 30 years in Orange Grove, Texas.
Gotcha.
And then last year, this is my 3rd year in Riviera. And so, yeah, that makes 38 years. I'm the math teacher. I'm pretty good at that. 30 and 5 and 3, that makes 38. But let me just correct you. Dog years. I'm not so sure about the dog years. You know, I look at education
I wasn't referring to you. I was referring to me.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Like
a
year as a
years.
coach is like 7 years in most other professions.
Well, if you love your job, a year as a teacher, I don't even know if you can measure that. Yeah. I know I was joking with my kiddos just this week. I was like, guys, I'm excited to see you wake up. We'd been out a week for Thanksgiving and then came back to school. And I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was ready to see my kids. So I guess it just depends on, and I know coaching is a little different because you got lots of personalities and lots of different things to do. But in a classroom, you know, these kiddos, I couldn't wait to see them.
It's, I think, refreshing to see that kind of energy from anyone in the workplace. We're going to dive into that in a little bit because they're just challenges today that have never been more present, probably in any era of the workforce. But you guys have a fascinating concept in your district, kind of the central theme for your district. And this is something I really, I wanted to bring on to talk about this because it relates not just to education. You know, if someone's listening to this and they're like, you know, what's an interview with a teacher have to do with me? You know, I'm a real estate agent, or I work in an insurance company, or, you know, maybe a college coach is listening to this. It has everything to do with everyone's industry and workplace, because really what it's about is about human connection. The theme for your district this year is 3 simple but powerful words: I see you. And
Correct.
I was hoping you could kind of give us the backstory on that theme and how it came to life.
So we were at the end of the year last year, and our superintendent, Patricia Thornton, said something about, she started off her speech and she said, I see you. And then she just goes on and on with it. And I'm like, I see you. Does that mean like an emergency room, or what does that exactly mean? And so as she talked, I was like, oh, I see you. Because, you know, my mind tends to wander at times, but you know what? It could be an emergency room. You could take it as I see you as an emergency room, or you see a person. Correct. And you look at it and you go, okay, what is it that you see? And so those 3 words really just stuck with me, because she does see us. And when she said those words, I was kind of like, you know what? I see you. That needs to be said everywhere. And so this summer, as I was promoting your book, Rudy Moves Forward, I spoke to a woman who did publicity for different places in California. And she explained to me, we were talking about ICU, and she explained to me, she goes, that saying's right out of Africa. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah. She said, you don't know? And I'm like, no, I don't have any idea. And she said, well, I see you in Africa. You will greet somebody and say, I see you. And the person in turn will greet you back and say, and I'm here. And I got to thinking, and I was like, you know what? That's phenomenal. Why don't we all do that? I see you and I'm here. It's so much better than how are you? Oh, I'm fine. When half the time, they're not. Nobody's going to tell you they're not fine.
Exactly.
And it just means a lot. I see you. You can use it in a workplace. You can see it in the classroom.
And I would say to your point, like I see you, when you're really locked in and attentive and noticing someone, you're going to know just by looking at them, their body language, their tone of voice, how they show up. You're going to know if they're fine, if they're, quote, doing fine or not. You don't need to say, how are you? If someone looks upset, they're going to wear that in their countenance, their facial expression, their tone of voice. They will look frazzled, So the whole idea of I see you is more than just, a saying or an African proverb. It's when it's done correctly, it's a way of life. It's part of a culture of a team or an organization. And, we're talking a little bit about teamwork as well with this episode. And I saw an interesting stat today. 79% of people who leave their jobs cite a lack of appreciation. And it's essentially saying almost 80% of people who quit a job cite a lack of I see you. Whether it's your supervisor, the people that report to them, maybe it's just their manager they report directly to, or the person at the top, in the C-suite. It doesn't matter. 80% of people leave a job because they feel unappreciated. They feel unseen.
Right.
It's troubling.
Well, and you can take it. I think we talked about this weekend when we talked about the whole Walmart situation. Look at that guy. I'm not going to say that what he did is correct at all, because it isn't. There are other ways to handle things. But when you work in a place and you don't feel like you're seen, and you feel like, oh, well, yeah, they see me and they're poking fun at me, or they're laughing at me, then you're going to reach out and do whatever. And that happens so many times in a classroom. Whereas when you truly say, I see you, I've got to stop and think about it. When somebody tells me, hey, I see you, I'm like, oh no, what do they see? And then I ask myself, am I doing what I need to be seen for? And if not, I can either A, get it in line, B, ask, hey, what can I do to improve, or get some kind of help? And let's face it, with mental illness and COVID and the lack of being in a classroom and hiding behind a mask and all that we've been through these couple of years, we gotta get it out there. We have to be able to say.
I think it's particularly tough, Rhonda, for people in, it's tough for everybody, but people in certain roles who, whether you're a coach, a teacher, a musician, an actor, like if you're like, we're all in some capacity, when you're a leader of any kind, we're all on stage.
Right.
Which requires us to be on all the time.
Correct.
It becomes even more important that we're showing up correctly and we're responding appropriately, because that sets a tone for everybody else.
Right. And just the fact that when you look at somebody and go, hey man, I see you, you open the opportunity and the door for them to say, really? Well, I'm just not feeling it today. Or what can you help me? Yep. There are just so many things you can do. And again, my superintendent, hats off to her, because, just those 3 words have made a big difference. And I, in turn, have been able to look at so many different situations and go, and you know what? Let's make this into something. Let's do something with it. Just like you did with the book, Rudy Moves Forward. I mean, gosh, that book's, I don't care who you are. That book in itself, that can be read by adults, kids. And, just the funny thing, just this weekend, it happened to me. A little girl got your book and I just happened to run into her and she was like, hey, she said, she goes, I got to ask you a question. And I was like, okay, what is it? And she said, well, what do you do if you have a kid picking on you? And I was like, well, I don't know. What do you do? And she goes, well, you remember that book? And I'm like, okay, what book? And she goes, the book about Rudy. And I was like, oh, yeah. She goes, well, what I do is I just put my chin up and my chest out and I just keep on going. And I'm like, you know what? You got it, girl. You got it.
Absolutely.
So that's what we got to do.
It warms my heart to hear that. As a kid
yeah.
who was bullied when he was younger, that warms my heart to hear that if that book's just touched one person and helped them in that way, mission accomplished for me.
Correct.
And
yes.
Yeah, I mean, let's rewind a little bit here, Rhonda. Speaking of the book, you brought it up. I never, at any point in my professional career, had any intentions of writing a children's book, and I'm just going to open the door here for you to share the story about how I ended up writing a children's book, and me not knowing anything about that aspect of my industry. I had no idea where to find an illustrator either. And this is, this whole thing is really an I see you, which, illustrates the broader theme of the podcast. So I'm going to let you unpack that whole story for everyone, because
okay.
I don't think you get enough credit for this.
Well, you got to take some credit too as the writer, but let me just tell you. So, we talked back in, I think it was December or whatever, and, COVID was still whatever it was. And you were like, well, there's speaking events just aren't going to happen because, of things that were going on. And I was like, hey, well, why don't you write a children's book? And you were like, what, a children's book? And I'm like, yeah, you write for adults all the time. All you got to do is just, simple it down a little bit and write for kids. And maybe you can, do whatever and use animals and just kind of do that. And you were like, oh, okay. And I'm like, because, there's a lot of books out there and it doesn't really, I'm just going to say, there's a lot of stuff out there, but it's not, I'm going to be nice. There's a lot of stuff out there. Is it worth reading? No. Does it have some hidden agenda? Yes. Are they trying to get you to think a certain way? Yes. But with this, what I was trying to communicate with you is like, John, just do what you do. Be a writer. If you can write an adult book, you can write for kids. Kids are smart. They get it. And so, before I knew it, the next thing I know, I'm like, oh my gosh, you got a rough draft. Well, I didn't think it was going to be that fast. And then you need an illustrator. And I just happened to be walking through the hall. And, at the school that I was at, it was only was it my second year?
Yep.
Yeah, my second year there. And I was like, wow. And so there it was. There was several kids that are just phenomenal, the artistry that they had. So I saw this one particular individual that I just kind of knew the family, but not really. I mean, I knew her dad as a little boy, and I was like, oh, wow, this is cool. And so I saw her at Hobby Lobby and I was like, hey, how would you like to illustrate a book? And she was like, well, I could try. And I was like, oh, you can do it. I saw your artwork. So I sent her the first 2 pages of the book. She illustrated it. She is just multi-talented, has so many wonderful ideas. Next thing you know, she's illustrating the book. You've written the book. She's illustrated the book. And then, we get it all together. And I'm like, oh, no, we have to get this out there. And so, yeah, that's kind of how it came. And then it was my mission this summer to get it out to as many people as I could. And I knew once I read the rough draft to my 5th and 6th graders last year, and they could quote it, and they were like, man, Ms. Yaklin, you need to tell them to make it a movie. I knew it was going to be a hit. We don't have, when kids see things for what they are, without big money and without being bribed and without being made to say anything, then it's going to be a smash. And so that's kind of what happened. I saw a need. I saw Piper. She could illustrate. You could write. And, actually, it's just kind of giving me something to do. Like I need something else.
Yeah, you're not busy enough, right?
No, but you know what? That's me. That's my gift in life. And my gift in life is to see people for what they are. And you're a writer. She was an illustrator. It's a great book. And that's how it came to be.
Yeah, and I again want to remind everyone, number one, none of this would have happened or been possible without Rhonda Yaklin. And number two, there is an episode of the podcast from earlier this year with my illustrator, where I interviewed her about her role within the book. And if you want to go back and listen to that episode of the pod, you guys can all do that. I'll put a link to that in the show notes for you. And I just think that, Rhonda, it's a wonderful example of I see you, and just seeing unique abilities and talents in people they don't necessarily see in themselves. I've had a few really wonderful, mentors, people who are close to me that saw something in me at various stages of my life that I didn't see in myself, and I feel very fortunate that I listened to that they were comfortable sharing that, and that I listened to them. And you're one of those people, and I thank God every day that I listen to you, because this has been a wonderful experience. You're like family to me. Your family's like family to me, and this has been, the most rewarding professional project that I have undertaken.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm just
Well,
excited
and
to
just think
see where it goes
we're just
next.
getting started.
Yep.
And we're just getting started.
So you explained like what I see you means, the origin of it, both historically, culturally in Africa, and then also the origin of it within your school district. Um, how do you see? You had mentioned COVID, mental health, anxiety of kids and adults. How do you see ICU as part of the bigger picture? Like maybe on a school campus, maybe in a corporate setting. Uh, you know, People working in teams. A classroom is a team. You know,
Right.
a part of a school district, like the elementary school, is a team. The marketing department of a company is a team within a bigger team. How do you see ICU playing out and helping create greater team cohesion?
Well, first of all, I see you. I really wish it could be we see you. And eventually, once we get it all developed, and well, it's not even when we get it developed, it's when people begin to see that, hey, look, you're not a one-man show. And if you are, then you're in the wrong business, because one-man shows end up getting us in a mess. And so the whole ICU concept in a school district, we got to build teams. We do it with athletics, we build teams. But what about those kids that don't fit on an athletic team? I, for one, couldn't walk and chew gum at the same time. So I was never on an athletic team. Being a social butterfly, I was all over it. And so I could be that person in a school. So I think that in a school district, we need to create teams. And, again, that's something you and I are working on. And I think that people need to go in and talk to these kids and build teams. We don't need to do it in January. We don't need to do it. We need to do it in August. We need to do it in June and July, and have these camps, because, used to, before, we send kids to camp for everything. That's great. Well, school is a 9-month camp or a year-round camp, depending on how you look at it. Why not start your year off with a camp that teaches these children and or teachers and school board members or businesses to, hey guys, we're a team. We need to build this together, because a team is not built by one person. A team is built by a group of people. And so with this whole thing, I don't know. It's just important.
So to your point right there, I wanted to stop you for a second, because I think this is where team building goes completely wrong in corporate America. So often it's viewed as a one-day event or a half-day retreat or an off-site thing at the beginning of the year, and then it's just supposed to be like a warm, fuzzy, feel-good. And it has just people cringe when they hear we're going to a team building event, because they think, oh, we're going to be doing these stupid role playing games and trust falls, and I'm going to be behind in my work on Tuesday when I finally get back to the office. It's not something they look forward to or connect to the big picture of how they all function together the rest of the year. And there are very rarely takeaways from that one-day retreat that allow you to use common language, core values, anything like that is practical strategy and skill for an ICU the other 364 days of the year. And that's why those team building initiatives, if you can even call them that, fail.
Right.
It's
Well,
got to be built
sometimes
into your culture so that it's year round.
right. And sometimes those team building things are just to check the box.
Yep.
Oh, we did it. We're done. Okay. Well, and I hate to bring this up. This is not a pleasant thing to bring up, but let's look at the shootings in America. Okay. We're ready. So you went through the little drill. Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe you went through the little drill, but did you go through the little drill and bother to look at your co-workers and go, hey man, this guy's not acting right, or this
Yep.
teacher's having a hard time, or these students just aren't themselves? No, we don't do that. What we do is we go in and say, oh, we're going to make everybody feel good about themselves, and we're going to say these things, and be it as you may. You know, our school's done a lot of training on safety issues lately, and we didn't just do it for a 45-minute thing, because it's serious business. So if your safety is a serious issue, then so is your mental health, and so is your team building. Because at the end of the day, who do you have to rely on? Your team.
And one of those things happened internally, like the Walmart situation you referenced. Like, that was a team member. That was literally like team member on team member crime. Like, literally. Because they did not function well together as a team. They didn't know how to get along and peacefully coexist.
Right.
These are preventable problems.
Well, that could have been fixed. But another thing too is, you know, with this whole ICU concept, it's not I'm the boss and I see you. That's not the way this is. It's like I see you. Everybody sees everybody, and we're a team and we work together. It's almost like a spider. You have all those legs in that body.
Yep.
And from that body, every leg is I see you. Can you just imagine all the webs that you're spinning from those legs? And if we're all seeing each other, and if we're all building this concept of team, we're not going to have those issues. There's always going to be a crackpot somewhere. But you know what? We're going to have less of them. Absolutely. Once we start this team building. And you know what? We did it. We see that it's important to do this in sports. We might want to go ahead and check out some other businesses like schools.
I say it all the time. Life's a team sport. School is a team sport.
Right.
It's all a team sport in some way, shape, or form. It's just, you know, your playing field, your arena, so to speak, just looks a little different. But
well, I mean, the music business. Look at that.
Yep.
Who do you go to see? You don't just go to see whoever they put on the billboard. Oh, they've built a fan base. They fill arenas. How do they do that? Because they build teams. That's how they're successful.
Then they read my book, Stadium Status.
Probably. Well, it's probably the Stadium Status that they read first, and then went right out and did it.
No, but in all seriousness, like to your point, like, yeah, the front man's great and everything, but he's nothing without the drummer. And like, you know, it's all, you're all interdependent. And the scary thing, you know, I was doing a little research before this episode. Harvard Business Review had a couple pretty, what's the word I'm looking for, indicting statistics that really kind of hit you between the eyes. First of all, more than 50% of all jobs require teamwork, which is not surprising. But the other statistic that was just glaring was 58% of American workers reveal that they trust strangers more than their boss. So like, I couldn't find the statistic on like what percentage of American workers trust strangers more than their coworkers. But if like 6 out of 10 people trust strangers more than their boss, I can't imagine that number is much higher in terms of their coworkers.
Right. Well, and you've got it again. School, sports, businesses, musicians, doctors. Let's take it to doctors. Sure. Doctors, nurses, whoever. You don't go to people you don't trust. And if you don't trust them, you don't go too long. Because you'll find somebody else. And the thing, once again, you know, I just can't stress enough. I mean, this is what I tell my kiddos. Look, we are a team. I don't like to lose, but if we lose, we're all losing together. And if
Yep.
we win, we're all winning together, because I'm not a one-man show. You're not a one-man show. And so again, I just think this whole teamwork, the things that we're working on and that we're building, people need to jump on, because, John, before you know it, we're going to be so overbooked, they're not going to be able to get us.
Exactly. And something I've tried to impress on, most recently corporate leaders, on the heels of COVID, especially, there's been so much remote work, people out of the office, not returning to the office, maybe only a percentage of their employees return to the actual physical office. There's been so much employee turnover. There's a whole generation aging out, retiring out of the workforce that that affects, whether they realize it or not, their entire company. That affects their ability to function as a team. And there's a model developed by a psychologist by the name of Tuckerman. And there's 5 phases of team building. And here's the interesting part: it's forming, storming, norming, performing, and then adjourning. Not every team lasts forever. But the second that you lose one member of that team to retirement, remote work, they resign, take another job somewhere else, no matter if you're the most high performing team, you automatically default to going back to the forming phase, because you've got to replace that person.
Right.
You don't just throw someone into the mix who's brand new and expect to get the same excellent result. That just doesn't happen. And there aren't enough leaders who understand that and can really wrap their mind around that. They tell me, oftentimes we can't afford, to do anything right now when it comes to team building, professional development. I'm like, you can't afford not to. You literally can't afford not. Not doing it is costing you more money than doing it would cost you. There's an ROI on this that is sometimes lost on some leaders. But that's soft skills training. It's like the software that drives the hardware. It's just not easily seen.
Right. Well, and you've got to ask yourself, what kind of a leader says, "Oh, we don't have the money to do that right now."
Yep.
Well, if we don't have the money to do team building right now, then you don't have the money for my mental health. You don't have the money. You don't have the time to sit and listen to me. So expect an accident.
Yep.
Because there's one brewing.
And not investing in your people is not seeing them.
Right. So you don't see them, and you don't see me as being important. And so, all right, well, let's see what happens. And, honestly, let's go ahead and look. You said something about COVID, how we worked at home and we did these things. Well, I'm going to just bring up Elon, the Musk guy.
Yep, Elon.
The guy I've texted a million times. Yeah. Okay, look at him. He wanted his people to come back to work. What kind of resistance did he get? And then he's paying for them to eat, and they're not even eating. And I'm like, and buddy, you created that.
Yep.
You created that because you trusted them. Obviously, back to your statistics, 58%, they didn't trust him too much. And so, you know what? Successful people make things happen. Yeah, and I think that's what's going on here.
There are so many cautionary tales like that is just astounding. And he's, a firebrand, lightning rod, call him what you want. That just makes it a great example, because it's more top of mind for everyone, because they see him online, and he's very very transparent to a fault sometimes. I'm trying to find there's another really kind of humorous situation, sad but at the same time humorous situation that happened in the workforce recently. I wish I could find. I'm trying to pull it up online right now as we talk, and of course, it's escaping me. But Rhonda, while I look this up, give us a couple examples that you use in the classroom that are practical skills that maybe this person listening right now is not a teacher, but they could use these ICU strategies that you use in their workplace.
Well, one of the things I do is I let the kids know, hey, listen, Matt, you're not a number. Your test score is not you. Your test score might be what your brain remembers at the time, but you are more than a number to me. You're not just kid sitting in my class. You've got a heart, you have thoughts, you have feelings. And so, that's the way we got to look at people. We need to look at people for what is it that you're good at? Find what you're good at. Everybody's good at something. Find what people are good at, focus on that, because I'm good at staying busy. And the busier I am, the better I like it. And so I try to do that. I try to find things. And that's what I tell my kids. Look, guys, you got to exercise your mind. What is it that you're good at? Let's focus on that. And so I try to let them know, look, I see what you are. And I've even gone around the room at times and I've said, you know what? I see you because you asked me, hey, Miss Yaklin, how's your day going? Or I see you because you'll come up and hug me every day and say, how's your mom? Or, hey, Miss Yaklin, let me help you. And these kids don't get anything for doing that. They're truly showing me that they're seeing me. And I do the same thing for them. And I do believe, like in our district, our superintendent, she lets us know, hey, I see what you're doing. When you don't think I see, I see. And she lets us know. And then she did, one of the most wonderful things at a board meeting. She called several people up. And when she called us to the board meeting, we didn't know what we were going to be there for. And we got to the board meeting and there we are. And then she stands up and she talks about you.
Yep.
And to your face and to everybody else, bringing out what she sees. And that's what we need to do. We need to commend people. We're good at saying, oh, you didn't do that right. But no, let's start saying, hey, you know what? This is what I saw that you did do right. And I like that. And so
to your point, Rhonda, I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
No, that's what I was going to say.
Okay. No, so to your point, like you're talking about test scores. Well, the corporate equivalent of that is like so often people are just viewed as human capital. You're viewed as a sales number. How much, how close to your sales quota are you every month? And that determines your value as opposed to being viewed as a human being. And
well, there's so much more to people than numbers.
Yep.
Let's face
it. Absolutely.
Numbers mean one thing, and that's in an emergency room when they're trying to save your life. And that's it. Because that's the only time those numbers are going to save your life. Is in an emergency room when you've got to, whether it's your lack of this or lack of that or oxygen or so on and so forth, because numbers, they're only so good for the day. They all change. Let's look at the market.
Yep. Exactly. I like having a relationship with numbers. I don't like living and dying by numbers. They can give you, a glimpse into what's going on, but I certainly don't live and die by numbers day to day. I don't think that's healthy for anybody. I found the article I was going to mention to you. United Furniture fires thousands by text days before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that really lets
2,700 workers lost their jobs the Monday before Thanksgiving.
Sends out a real message.
Yeah, it's a company in Mississippi, one of the largest furniture businesses in the country.
No, not good.
Yeah.
And something will that. And I'm sure they didn't offer, I don't know, because I haven't read the article, but just think about that for a second. You're going home. You're going to be thankful for what? Losing your job?
Yeah.
Probably coming. But once again, let's just take that scenario. So, maybe they weren't selling enough. Wonder how much team building they did.
Yep.
I just wonder. Or wonder how much coaching they were given.
Yeah, it's indicative of bad culture that you're failing that much that you're going to fire 2,700 people.
Right.
Yeah, that starts at the top. But unfortunately, that person probably is not losing their job.
No.
Yeah, so what's, for someone listening, Rhonda, as we kind of wind down here, what's a good jumping off point for them? They want to start, instituting a little bit more of an I see you mentality or culture within their department, their organization, their small business, their classroom, perhaps. How do you recommend they just start taking steps in that direction?
Wow. Number one, you've got to be sincere. And if you're not, nobody's going to buy it.
Yep.
And if you truly don't want to make a difference, wait a while till you're ready. Just wait a while. Just today, like I would talk to my kids about, well, we talk all the time about everything, but today I talked about, hey guys, you've seen this ICU thing now. For all year long, it's been up on my wall. I think you have a picture of it. And on the other end of the wall, it says, and I'm here. And so I discussed with them today. I was like, and I'm here. What does that mean to you? And they said, well, Miss Yaklin, you just got a vibe in this room. And I'm like, well, that's great. A vibe. I'm 61, going to be 62 years old. And I've got a bunch of 10-year-olds telling me I got a vibe. So I feel pretty young. I feel good about that. But I just say, look, if you need, there's going to be some things coming from you. They need to keep watching your podcast. They need to, if nothing else, even, I don't care how old you are, get the book, Rudy Moves Forward, and read that book. It's not a kid's book. I mean, it is a kid's book, but it's not just a kid's book. Read that book and see what that book tells you. And then if you reach out to people to help, and, we'll be glad to help them. I'm sure you can help them. I can help them, but let's just get this started. Let's do something to make a difference.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point that I want to kind of pivot and shine a spotlight on you and your classroom as we finish up here. Is last year, my podcast listeners, my readers were extremely generous and helpful in making sure that your kids all were able to receive Christmas presents. And
right.
I think that I can't do it justice describing the environment that you're in and the home life of some of these kids. But I want to make sure we do the same thing again this year. This podcast is going to air the very beginning of December, any day now. So that'll give us plenty of time to get some donations and do the same thing that we did last year. Just if you could just describe for us sort of some of the challenges some of these kids have outside of the classroom, and financial challenges that their families might have, or why you were so concerned about making sure Christmas happened for them. Obviously, you didn't do that on a lark or a whim. It's for a reason.
Well, first of all, little bitty kids, younger kids, everybody, Santa Claus, and we seem to make sure little bitty kids always have something because they're still young. They don't know. And as I told this girl today, Addison, my secretary, she's not really my secretary, but she is, John.
That's what I call her. Your executive assistant.
Yeah. She was like, Miss Yaklin, there's not a Santa Claus. And I said, really? And she goes, yeah, there's not one. And I said, yes, ma'am, there is. I said, do you get anything? She goes, well, yeah, all the time, but it's my parents. And I said, well, then guess what? They are your Santa Claus. Yep. Because somebody's giving you something. But as far as these kids last year, when you watch these kids and they come to school and the best their parents, and I'm going to say the best their parents have to offer. Does it meet my standards? Well, I've learned to be less judgmental because my standards are not everybody else's standards. But yep. I want them. I want them to know that there are other people that are watching and that care. And so last year, like you said, we were able to do that. And I mean, I'd love to do it again. This year, one of my biggest concerns is the state of Texas has state testing that we have to do. It has to be done on computer. You're supposed to practice. We don't have enough computers. So I put out something one day last week where I said, hey, I need X, Y, and Z. And I had a donor call or text me actually and said, hey, I'm going to donate this to you. I mean, I could use help like that. These kids could use gift cards to Walmart because we live in an area where they can't all go. And there's things they need. I mean, come on, like socks. That's great. How about a backpack that's not falling apart? That's even better. And while we think, and they're older kids, and why don't they deserve the same joy that little ones get? And, if you can't help her, and I know tough times are tough. And that's what I tell my kiddos. just last week before Thanksgiving, I was like, guys, listen, there are people that need something and they need food. And when my kiddos could scrounge enough, and I'm telling you, 28 little kids could scrounge enough to do, and some more than others, but to do dinners for 4 families, and those families cry and thank me.
Yep.
I want to give back to those kids.
And that's
And
something
to
those
that,
kids will remember for the rest of their lives that they did that and the response they got.
and it's not all about what can you give me? Because again,
Yep.
I see you, not what are you going to do for me? It's what can I do for you? And that's the deal, John. You writing that book, you contacting me and sending me a book of, with my kiddo in it earlier, that year. It's what you did for me to make me see, hey, these are what people see.
Yep.
And so I don't even know. I mean, I would give anything in the world if anybody could visit my classroom for one day, just one day, because you would see loving children, you would see smart kids, you would see kids that are struggling, you would see kids that are trying their hardest to do for me whatever, because they know I'm going to go out and do for them.
Yep.
So with that being said, I mean, see the best in people and don't do it because you're going to get something, because we're not guaranteed anything. So give what you got.
Exactly. I think, what we'd like to be able to do is we'd like to be able to fund, the rest of what you need for those computers for your classroom, whether it's a computer, the AV cart that goes with it. And then also try and help out for those kids, with gift cards. So, I'm going to begin fundraising with my audience in earnest to do that and to see what we can do, because I did get to visit your classroom and I did get to see, how those kids respond to you. And, I got to see also the need, in the school, in the classroom, the need with particular kids. And, everyone's trying their best. And, sometimes you need resources too, though, so we want to try and help you get that. And I can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast at the end of a long, busy day and making time for us. And it's always a pleasure.
Well, go support your book. Rudy Moves Forward. Remember, chin up, chest out, and know that we see you.
Awesome. Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you.